Today's guest on A Life and a Living is Thomas Anderson. Thomas is a Swedish entrepreneur. He's a change manager. He's an author. He's a speaker, and he's also a coach. He has recently written a very good book called The Vulnerable Man, which is Reclaim Your Life, Master Your Emotions, and Break Your Patterns. And during the interview, Thomas talks very openly about his own struggle and how he came to really reclaim his life. And I think a lot of people will identify what he's talking about here. And we just talk about the process that he went through to actually do that. Gives a lot of great tips as to how you can create the space for yourself to really, really shape the life that you want to have, but also to understand how we need to switch off from the digital world and how we need to manage that digital world. So it's a really, really personal interview. And I think Thomas gives an awful lot of value. I think people will identify with it in this current climate as well. And really, really, I think there's an awful lot of goodness in here that will help people to reclaim the lives that they really, really want. So I really encourage you to listen through it. So that in mind, please sit back and enjoy the interview with Thomas Anderson. Thomas, thank you so much indeed for joining us here on the podcast. We're delighted to have you with us and to share your story.
Thank you so much for having me, John.
No, it's a great pleasure. The book that you have written, the Vulnerable Man, Reclaim Your Life, Master Your Emotions, and Break Your Patterns. Great read, great story, an awful lot of good content. I want to kind of pick on a little bit of that, but maybe just to kind of contextualize it, it might help, because I know that, you know, going back a number of years ago, that you on the outside, everything looked perfect in your life. It was the idyllic life, but inside you kind of knew this wasn't quite right, and it wasn't kind of sitting well with you, and it led to a fairly dark place. So maybe you might just, if you don't mind, just to kind of give a little bit of background, because it does help to contextualize the story in the interview.
Yeah, because the book starts in 2015. At that time, I had everything that I should have. I had sort of built my career. I was working as a management consultant. I had the house, I had my wife, I had my stepkids and the dog and the cats, and I had sort of everything, and just sort of built on all these happy things. And I wanted to do good in my career. I wanted to be there for the kids. I wanted to sort of do everything. And also, in a way, that was what I've been doing my whole life, fixing things and being there for everyone. But also then I started to feel not being enough. So in a way, it didn't matter what I did. And I just it was just more things to do. And I just there's not enough time. And people asking me, can you do this as well? And I just said, yes, of course, because I wanted to help. But then it was this sort of heavy burden that I was feeling, do people like me, or do they just want me to do things? And I started feeling tired all the time, feeling angry, and just sort of being, depressed in a way. And it was very, very low point. I was sometimes thought about suicide. Should I stay on this earth or not? In a way, I knew I wouldn't do it in a way, but sort of these dark thoughts were there because I was sort of stuck in an emotional prison. I didn't have the tools to get out. I didn't know who could I talk to, because I was afraid if I talked about, for example, at my work, if I talked about it's too much right now, would that sort of miss my career opportunities? Because I had moved into a new phase where I had a sort of key account management role. I was doing very good in my role. If I sort of said it was too much, would they take away these opportunities? Would they say, well, he doesn't meet up the pressure or can handle the pressure? If I talked to my wife at that time and sort of talking about I'm not knowing where we're going and what's happening and I'm feeling this, would she not like it? Or so I was sort of not having the tools to talk about it. I didn't know how to face my emotions. I was just it was just building up. And I think that was what happened with me. It was just more and more and more adding up, and I couldn't sort of know what to do. But that also was the sort of change as well. Then it's this is not the way life should be. And that was also the start of my journey to change and meet all these fears and things.
Yeah. So I'm sure that what you're saying there, I'm sure so much, if not all of it, can resonate so much with people listening. So when you actually got to, because it's, it's wonderful that you recognized it for starters, but how did you actually start to confront it and then do something about it? Because at some stage, you've got to not only have these thoughts going around in your head, but you've got to articulate them and say them to other people, like your wife at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you do that? How do you manage it? How do they respond, and how do you deal with their response?
Well, I think in a way, it's actually also a journey. I think sometimes if you're stuck, you want to have that instant reply. You want to sort of solve it right away. But I think the first step for me was like, in a way, I felt that it's just too much. I need space. This is not the way it should be. So in I don't know, something deep within, I need to take care of myself. In a way, my body needs to recover before I can sort of take care of the mental part of sort of taking care of my mind. So first step was to create space. And I had a friend who was a yoga teacher, and we talked about this. And I said, it's just too much at work. And she said, you need to learn to say no. And like, what do you mean? Well, like, how many things are you doing? Well, too much. She said, well, take these, if it's like 3 projects, and say that you need to prioritize these. And if there are more things coming up, say, no, I have these 3 projects. I want to do them in a good quality, so I can't do anything more right now. And then if you have a discussion with your boss or anyone else, you can sort of prioritize, but just saying, if I want to deliver my work with quality, this is enough right now. And then you can sort of balance that. And that was sort of one step to sort of start saying no, because that created space for me. And then the second thing was to sort of looking at sort of health. And I started to work out more. And I sort of told myself, work out 3 times a week, at least. And then I started doing sort of different walks and hikes. And I think these 2 things was the first step, because then I got space to start of getting distance to things. And I started to heal. And then after a couple of months, I spoke to a friend, and I talked about something called highly sensitive person. And that sort of resonated with me, that maybe I'm one person that take in a lot of emotions and feelings and sort of sense what I feel, more sort of an empath. And then I went to therapy, a session with her. And then it was starting to allow and talk about these emotions and all these things within, and starting to articulate. And that was maybe the second step for me. So I think it's a journey in a way to sort of, but I think the first step is to take that step back to maybe get that balance within, and then start talking with the people you trust. And maybe it's a therapist or a coach or friends that you trust.
Okay. But at some stage, you've got to sit down and have that conversation with your partner and the children, the stepchildren. How difficult was that, and what was the response?
Of course, it was, I think it also was like in different steps as well. I think because we like, it can talk about the relationship, and it's talking about taking space, but to take that first step to actually say, I need to take space, I think that was actually quite okay in the beginning. Like, I need to cut down on work. It's too much right now. I think that was quite sort of okay to sort of talk about. But maybe the next step, when you're sort of feeling in the relationship, and how because that was one of the things as well, that how is the relationship, and that's of course talking about relation is also tough. But so I guess it's different steps as well there. But I think the key thing is maybe just to start that it's just too much right now. And this I'm feeling, and just putting it out on the table, not judging that you need to solve something. Is that this is what can we do about it?
Yeah, you said earlier, and you touched on it, but this realizing or understanding that the highly sensitive people, and that was kind of an eye opener for you. And for me, maybe could you explain what is meant by that?
Yeah, it's highly sensitive people. It's a personality trait in a way, and it's that you take in and process more information that other. You have sort of more deep processing, and maybe if someone notices 10 things, you maybe think about 100 things. it's the way you sort of, you're that person that sort of makes sure that everyone is doing okay, or you're maybe open to scenery or to smells or whatever. Like, it's just you take in more information and think and plan in a way. But that could also cause you to be more overstimulated, that it's like it's too much to take in.
Right.
And because that was for me the understanding, because I could sort of, you know, come into a room and I can sense, hey, we don't have a good someone is mad in here, or this is not a good feeling in the room. And I was like, don't everyone see this? Why don't we talk about it? And then I started to realize, no, maybe it's just me. I see this. They don't see it. But that has for a long time made me feel wrong. And I felt that I overthink in so many matters. Like, for example, I was maybe not the most masculine boy. I don't know, you know, having that sort of doing those rough things. I was more of maybe calm and thinking more. And that also I felt wrong for growing up. I was not the tough one going diving and things like that. And then I just realized I think too much, or not too much. I just like, if I do this, what will people think? Will I do it okay? What will happen afterwards? Will it hurt? You know, I just think in so many steps. And then I just realized, oh, that's me. That's also why I'm a project manager, because I do these kind of planning steps. But also in other parts, it could be that I overthink and maybe don't want to create a fuss about things. Like, I don't want to talk about things because I know maybe how will that person react? What state of mind are they? And I maybe also take responsibility for more people as well. So
and how do you manage that? I mean, in a sense, I could see how that could be. I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, in the sense that, you know, your sensory and how you pick up on vibes is I mean, and in the work that you do in change management must be hugely valuable. But the other side of that is that can become very consuming.
Yes. That's
so
exactly.
How do you manage it if you know that you are this kind of highly sensitive person? How do you manage it so that you can get the best out of it without it being a burden?
No, this is because that, like, it was like this understanding that I sort of take in, for example, emotions, and then before I took the emotions as mine, like I sense something and like there is someone is upset, and I say maybe it's my fault, and I was egoistic in a way. I just took it on my own.
Right.
But now I just sort of see it as a sensation instead. I meet someone, if you maybe go to the grocery store and you sort of meet the one there, and someone is angry, and you come home or feeling sad or angry or something like that, it's changed your state of mind. But then you can just see that, hey, I have a sensation of being angry. There's a feeling of being angry. Who does it belong to? It's not mine. And you sort of distance yourself from that emotion.
Yeah.
Because that is sort of one thing, to sort of not take it as your own.
Yeah. So when you think about that, and so it's occurring to me is that, you know, if you look at the world we live in, and the digital world that we live in, where we are consuming so much information, it's coming at us, you know, from everywhere. You can't avoid it. And you are the sensitive person, so that means that you actually are receiving or being bartered with this. But, you know, as you say, the amount in your book, that the amount of time we have to process so that the information has increased, the volume has increased, the time to process has decreased.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
Well, first of all, being aware that you have this to take in information, but also to see that we are in a new world. So I think sort of talking about awareness, that we are in this digital world. And I think this digital world and being connected all the time is sort of a catalyst for all our inner fears. Because we are humans, we are social animals. We sort of thrive on being connected and sharing information. But before we had to stop, like it was like at the end of the day, you didn't meet any more people. But now you can be socially connected all the time. So I think that is the shift. I sometimes see myself as the sheepdog, and I sometimes compare myself to my grandmother taking care of the kids. But she only had, she had 5 kids. She had the farm and everything there. But it was only that, taking care of that. But now I just I see myself as a sheepdog, you know, taking care and being sort of making sure that everyone is okay and doing things like that. But now it's just not only one herd. It's 10 or 20 or 30. It's so many things to take care of. And then sort of my responsibility grows. And that being aware that I am the one that take in a lot of information, and want to be there for everyone. I am a caring person, and I see things, and that person is not feeling well. That one, I can help there. This needs to be done. And then I get sort of overwhelmed. I want to fix everything. So I think that is the trick, to sort of step back and prioritize what is sort of my local place, where can I contribute. And I think that's also the social media, everything also we need to face our fears, because my deepest fear was not being part of the group. I wanted to be there and making sure that people liked me. And that was sort of, now I could be available everywhere. So my fear was not being there. And then I needed to be there for everyone in all different situations. So I think that's also sort of the second step for me, to actually see this fear behind my sort of my childhood trauma, or whatever you call it. Right. So I think it's different steps, but I think just recently I sort of see this internet and sort of the social media as a catalyst for our inner fears. And I think that's what now we're struggling with this, and it's just too much. And maybe the first step is create that space to get distance, and then actually process and sort of learn these things.
Yeah. And just to kind of go into the, sorry, go on, you were going to say,
no, I can just go on for so long.
No, I just curious, because when you're talking about that, I'm thinking a lot of the work you do in organizations is about change management.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you look at, when you're talking about, if you take the book, The Joy of the Vulnerable Man, and you talk about reclaiming your life, mastering your emotions, and breaking your patterns, and you're going into change management to support an organization in change management, how do you bring what you have learned into the organization, and what are the things that you see that really, where this really adds value to the work that you do in change management?
Well, I think one of the key things is actually to be calm in change, because like the first thing when I start working with change management, and it's that it creates an energy, and people are worried, or because change is
it's disruptive.
Yeah, exactly. So it creates that sort of tense feeling. And I think before I maybe sort of took responsibility for it. If someone got upset that this change is going on, I said, well, let me help you, and I maybe took it on. But now I can distance myself and maybe be the calm person in that change, and creating a space for people to be worried, and to people to talk. Since I also been sort of doing this life coach and that training, and it's to allow change and to allow space to be worried. And I think that is maybe the key thing, to be more calm in this process now. And because if you want to go through change, you need to allow people to sort of air their thoughts, air their feelings. And because no thoughts, no feelings, nothing is wrong. It's just a feeling. And if you sort of hold that back, that person will not, it could be stuck. So if you then create a space and don't judge if someone is worried, or have this, or worried about how will it go with this work, and how can I manage with this new position, then you can actually just let people be there and grow in their own phase. Like just being a coach, you help people take it step by step. Because if you push too much, it will probably not work. And also people will be broken down or pushed out.
Yeah. And when you look at the work that you have done, and this is something like just touching on the point you're making about breaking patterns, and this can be from an individual perspective, it can be from an organizational perspective, yeah. Right? But how do you believe, because it's easy to say break your patterns, right? It's much easier to say it than do it, right?
Yeah.
So when there is a pattern of behavior, and let's take it at an individual level, it's a pattern of behavior, how do you help somebody at an individual level, and I'll come on to the organization in a second, but how do you help somebody at an individual level to break the pattern of behavior that is not serving them? Firstly, to actually understand that the behavior is not serving them well, but then how do you help them to actually break that pattern of behavior?
Yeah, many different steps, maybe, but I think the first key, if you want to change, it's helping that person to take these steps to change. And of course, it's to maybe see why the patterns are there. So it's finding why are the patterns there, and maybe there's a reason for it, but also setting this sort of, what's your goal? Where do you want to change? And then also make sure that you sort of set someone out on a journey, that it's sort of stepwise. It's not that you can solve it directly. and allow yourself to fall on this journey. But I think it's setting a goal and also really face what are the deepest fear. Because when I sort of see when you work with change and then you have these goals and you want to do these changes, I want to work out more, and then you say I'm going to run 10K every day, and then it's not a reasonable target, but to set real targets, because most of your challenges that fail, it's maybe mainly 90% on inner work. It's I failed, it's no point for me continuing, or what will other people think, what will they think if I do this every time, what will my wife think, what will people think? So it's a lot facing what is the actual fear within, and I think that is back to sort of creating that space to allow these feelings and thoughts. Because we think that, oh, I'm the only one thinking like this, I'm the only one feeling like this, and no, you're human, you feel, you think. Understand why that feeling is there, allow why that thought is there, understand it, and then you can sort of move on and see, hey, this feeling, as we say, put it out in your hand, what is this feeling about, and understand it. And then maybe it's from your past, or is it really reasonable that you should not do this? Should you worry what people think? So it's so many things, but yeah.
Okay. And when I mean, you know, because it's interesting in terms of when you look, I mean, you said you do a lot of work in organizations that around change management and that. And one of the things that I'm sure that you see is you know, there's kind of high level of burnout with people. So how can you help organizations to help their people to prevent that level of burnout? Because very often we hear people saying, oh yes, we invest in our people and in the well-being of our people, but at the same time their people are burning out. So what they're saying and what's actually happening, there's a gap between.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think actually doing a speaking series on, I call it mental ergonomics. And I think one of the first steps, and maybe the important thing now, is to create the awareness of what's going on. I think we're sort of maybe in blind that we do everything the way we have done all the time. It's not working. And I think we, in a way, stuck in an industrial way of working that, like, utilize the time, be efficient. We can do, like, just push. But maybe that worked 10 years ago. But now when you push someone, there's no end. So in the first way, create the awareness that we are in a new world. This creates change. We need to think about the digital world affects our brain. We are social animals. So we are in this new way of sort of life. So we need to set these new kind of rules and routines to manage. Because if we're not aware about sort of maybe our inner world and how we feel and allow that space, we will push ourselves too much. But that also is maybe a catch-22, because we didn't need this maybe 50 years ago because it was a different world. So we haven't trained in it. So create that sort of training and understand that sort of inner work or inner world and allow space for that. And I think that's maybe the key thing to move on. We cannot push ourselves anymore. And why should we? It's of course, we need to maybe be more aware. Maybe the management need to be more sensitive and sort of seeing the people more. And it's a change of leadership as well right now. But also, then we go back to change management. Maybe you have leaders today that have been leaders for a long time and are used and been sort of rewarded for, making things more and more efficient. And they use the same tools that they have worked with for a long time, but maybe they don't work anymore. Yeah. But they also want to stay with the position. So there are many different things. So it's a big switch right now.
So when you talk about the tools that the tools did not work, what are the tools that you see working now that are effective in managing that change?
I think one of the key things now is create space to sort of allow this uncertainty, especially now, people are coming back to work and it's how will this work and meet people again. And you need to sort of create that space to talk about these uncertainties of how are you feeling right now, and allowing that sort of things to sort of settle in. And I think as a manager, to maybe talk more to your employees and not telling them what to do, but create that space. How are you feeling? No, how are you actually feeling for real? and it's allowed to be worried. It's allowed to not be insecure about these things, and create that space so others can grow. Otherwise, you just push everything down, and people will get that sort of burnout. So I think that's sort of to be maybe more compassionate and more empathic and being more humans in a way. We're not robots.
And well, absolutely. And I mean, in terms of, I mean, again, just touching back on your book, The Vulnerable Man, the reclaiming your life. Do you believe now that you have reclaimed your life?
Well, life is a journey, but I think the key thing is I now have the tools and my routines to sort of always fall back. Life will happen, but I know if these things happen, this is the way I found back to myself. I know to find the calmness within. And I think some of the worries that have been sort of in my body for a long time, trying to be enough and not fitting in, I think those things have sort of disappeared. I'm more calm and comfortable in myself. But then, of course, life is life. Things will always happen, but I feel very in a good state right now. Yes.
Yeah. And somebody listening right now, and and as we all know, there's a there are many people for a variety of reasons and good reasons are going through a huge amount of stress. Yeah. We also know that there's a lot of because of COVID possibly the catalyst for it, but people are kind of thinking about, is this the life that I want? They're reevaluating. What would your recommendation be to them? What would you say? Okay, here are a couple of things to do to actually start to really reflect upon it, and rather than just kind of thinking about it, here maybe 2 or 3 steps that will actually help you get on that path to reclaim your life.
I think one of the key things is to take a step back, to find time for yourself, and I believe a lot in sort of exercise or do things, creating that space of actually movement, going for hikes, going to the gym, go swimming, being in nature, because creating that space is a key thing today, since we're always connected. We need that space for ourselves to be in nothing, because that's where creativity are, and you sort of can let your minds or thoughts actually settle. So I think that is one key thing. Otherwise, everything is just stirring around, and what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? And they sort of you will never get an answer. So create some kind of space, and then it's in a way setting a direction. And I believe we also trust your intuition. If you feel there's something new you should do and you don't know what, take a first step and do one change. And then that change might lead to something else. Because that's also something that you think you want to know, I want to do this now, and then in 2 years, and then in 5 years, and then in 10 years. And then it also maybe it's too much to think about, because you don't know, you cannot plan 10 years. But just maybe also listen to that intuition, say, there's something new I want to do. Okay, what can I do right now? Should it be a new job? Is it a new hobby? But to take a step into that direction and then see how it goes.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful, actually, Thomas, because I think that, so often you listen to people as they're saying that they're either waiting for this kind of big thing, whatever that big thing, is to happen or to land or idea.
Yeah.
But they're not actually taking any steps.
Exactly.
Right. So I love what you're saying there, that, get into action, because if you take one step, that'll lead to the next step, and suddenly you've moved from the point where you are by taking those small steps. But by actually sitting, waiting either for inspiration or or some great realization to be unveiled to you, you're just always going to stay stuck, aren't you? And you're never going to go anywhere. And so we could go on talk about it, but I mean, I think that there's some great stuff in the book, and I would highly recommend people to go and buy it. And I'll ask you where people can get in touch with you as well at the end. A couple of things that I ask everybody, and you did touch on one of them. I think one is really interested in when I interview people, to understand their daily habits and daily rituals and what they are and how they serve you. And you kind of touched on it a little bit a minute ago. And I would just like you to maybe, if you're happy, to share what your daily rituals are and what they do for you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I sort of work out every morning. So I'm at the gym, usually 6:30. It doesn't mean that I need to do anything heavy or rough, but maybe sometimes it's just going for a swim or going for a walk or doing the gym. But to have that routine to start to do the workout, it's, especially now working from home, it's helping me a lot. To sort of, because I believe that to wake up your body in a way, to start movement or do something in the morning, I think that is a good key. Not just wake up and go to the computer or Teams meetings. I try to, during the day, also take small breaks, not using my time doing social media or like in the breaks, and actually just take the break or listen to music. I try to do something during lunchtime, maybe get a small walk or something like that. And usually I have after my work, I use sort of all these I create a space in between things. So it's after work, I need to do something, if it's a walk or trying to create that sort of space before I do my sort of normal family life or things like that. So to create some sort of time for the mind to switch between different things. And I have the sort of the sleep function on my phone, turns on at I think it's 7 or 8 in the evening. And so my phone doesn't ring or any messages. Yeah, of course, notifications I've turned off for a long time. And also I try to sort of calm down before going to sleep. So it's maybe the last hour, just sort of maybe calm music and just setting down so I sleep well.
Oh,
so I
okay,
think these routines are, for me, very key thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah. I love the fact too that you actually create that separation between, from the work that you do, and particularly when you're working from home. And I think that's been a challenge for people, is actually that it all blurs into one.
Yeah.
And what you're doing there is that you're creating the space between them.
Yeah.
So you're kickstarting and you're shutting down.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And I know the next one is a challenge for you to answer, because it's a question about a book other than your own. And I know even in your own book, you've actually got a list of books at the back that you recommend. But I'm just wondering, a book that comes to mind that's had an impact upon you, what it is and what was the impact?
I think one of the book that affected me a lot was Eckhart Tolle and The Power of Now, that I read. I think it was about 10 years ago. And it made it sort of really, I don't know, it made me question so many things. And I know when I sort of read it, I didn't want to admit that I read it, because it was one of these hippie books or whatever I wanted to call it. Because that was one of the things in the beginning for me. It was like, scary to talk about these things, and going to therapy the first time and talking about emotions. It was like, I'm an engineer. I've been in such a logical world that this felt like I would lose everything. But that was a life-changing book.
Yeah, I know. Great book. Not the easiest read in the sense of, you do have to concentrate, but the content is absolutely superb. And finally, and I said you work in organizations in change management, and you're looking and you're observing and working with leaders. Curious as to what you see as what is a really important trait that a leader must have in today's world.
I think it's to be very present and be aware, and sort of being there for the employees, and having the sort of sensing how is the actual atmosphere in the group or with the employees right now, and not being the pushing one, maybe more listening and sort of sensing the actual situation right now, because especially now when changes are going on, to be very open for if people change habits or change their personalities, because there is something going on at that time. To be open and actually create that trust, so people can talk to you and actually come to these with these emotional or rough things. I think that's a key thing now to build long-lasting companies and relationships.
Absolutely. Thomas, thank you so much indeed for joining us. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the show. We could continue talking, but I want to respect your time. And every success of the book, I know that it will continue to be a success. And the work that you're doing, I think you're doing fantastic work. And I love the openness that you have with people about your own situation, because I think that helps other people to really get the message strongly. So thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.